You may have been told, or you might actually believe, that science has proven Christianity to be simply superstition and myth. Or you may have heard the accusation that Christianity is a science stopper. Well, neither of those is true. In fact, the opposite is the case. In the last video, you saw how religion has always been a part of science. In this video, you will see how the Judeo-Christian worldview and a 4th century bishop, Basil of Caesarea, is responsible for the rise of modern science. Basil was raised in the Christian tradition that included the study of Greek thought. Now, this included Greek geometry and Greek astronomy. Yes, the early Christians thought it was important to learn science. Basil taught Greek science, but added corrections to fix what Aristotle had gotten wrong. Basil's corrections came totally out of his religious views, out of what is now called the creationist tradition of Christianity, which was actually established within Judaism during the last 4 centuries before Christ. Now, this creationist theology was fully developed by the 2nd or 1st century BC. It lasted for 1600 years, and it gave birth to modern science. Now, looking closely at Basil's religiously motivated corrections of Aristotle reveals several modern science or modern physics concepts and ideas. Basil described the concept of natural law, the idea that there's constant laws of physics that are the same everywhere, what we now would call unification. Basil described the conservation of momentum and the conservation of energy. And of course, he taught the idea that the universe had a beginning. The creationist tradition, or the creationist theology, is not the same thing as creationism. Creationist theology, again, the basis of modern science, can be summarized with 3 words: unity, comprehensibility, and contingency. Well, unity simply means that the laws which apply to the terrestrial world also apply out in space. This is not what the ancient Greeks believed, and this concept was debated actually until Isaac Newton. The unity of the heavens and the earth has Old Testament roots. Jews believed in the unique sovereignty of Yahweh, and that nature, all of it, is completely subservient to Yahweh's commands. The entire universe is subject to a single code of law which was established at the beginning of the universe. Scripture makes it clear that the heavens are not accorded any special status and that they are subject to the same laws as the earth and its inhabitants. Again, this was a topic of discussion until Isaac Newton was able to demonstrate this unification mathematically, but the Old Testament Jews believed it first. The idea that we can actually comprehend the world was developed during intertestamental Judaism from the concept of wisdom as the intelligence responsible for the orderly behavior of the world and the reasoning faculty in humans. This led to the idea of the processes of nature being governed by laws and hence open to human comprehension. Human reason, as an image of the same logos that is implanted in the world, is a recurring theme in early Christian writings. The operation of the universe can be understood by humans due to the fact that our reason is in some way a reflection of the image of that same lawfulness or that same reason that governs the entire world. Contingency comes out of an idea called the relative autonomy of nature. What this means is that the universe continues to operate because of the laws that God created and assigned to it. The universe is not self-originating, it is not self-determined, but at the same time it's not unpredictable. Relative autonomy comes from the Christian belief in God's 2 powers. God's absolute power, God can do what he wants, hence do miracles, and God's ordained power, which is the natural law that God prescribed, which upholds the universe in a regular way. Now, these 2 powers are complementary. The regularity of the universe makes miracles detectable. If God only used his absolute power, we might not see a regular world with patterns. It would look capricious and random, and everything would be a miracle, and therefore science couldn't operate. This actually was a factor in the decline of Islamic science. But if God only used his ordained power, then there would be no supernatural interaction with the world, and we wouldn't be able to detect God in nature at all. This is what classical deism assumes. So here's an example. Basil and the early Christians believed that the origin of the universe, the first 6 days of Genesis, is beyond human understanding because it completely depends on God's immediate and capricious activity, his absolute power. However, the current operation of the universe, the seventh day, can be understood because God is resting and nature is acting in accordance with his ordained power. Now, Scripture teaches that God has a covenant with creation. God expresses his faithfulness by upholding the world in an organized manner that we as humans can comprehend. Because God has absolute power, he was able to create the universe any way he wanted, and that makes nature contingent. But because he only made it one way, and he makes sure that it stays regular through his ordained power, then it's our job to discover how he did it. In other words, to do science. So why was Christianity necessary for the rise of modern science? Well, science depends on three big ideas. Nature must be regular and demonstrate patterns. Nature must be comprehensible by us. And because nature is contingent, we can theorize about how nature works and then investigate and experiment to discover the way that God made it.